Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of Cinero and Polycom, we'd like to thank you for taking time out of your busy day to hopefully gain a better understanding of how Skype for Business is integrating into the modern-day meeting space. So before we begin, just a little bit about the presenters. Paul, you want to tell us a
Hey
little bit
guys.
about you?
Yeah, thanks for having me today, Rob. Name's Paul Gurman. I'm a Microsoft Solutions Architect for Polycom. I'm focused on supporting the Western region and sometimes Department of Defense customers, and have a bunch of certifications. But I've been working with Polycom for just over a year now. So.
Great. And I'm Rob Gilfillan, one of the co-owners of Cinero, and spent the better part of my career designing, building, and servicing collaborative corporate meeting spaces. So just to kind of set the stage, over the past several years, we've all seen Link and Skype for Business become a really valuable collaborative tool for desktop meetings as well as instant messaging. And Skype has really transformed the way we all meet, whether employees, clients, partners, and whatnot, on an everyday basis. And probably many of you attending the webinar today use Skype regularly and probably mastered desktop collaboration, and many have probably dabbled in moving it into the meeting room space here and there. So why we're here today is we're going to share some insight on how Polycom Cinero really making it seamless to schedule, launch, and conduct meetings within the enterprise. Before we begin, just to kind of set the stage a little bit, I want to just talk about how the meeting room has evolved over the past several years. It's really no secret today that if in the enterprise and really anywhere, the real estate trend is to do more with less. So we're seeing private offices and large cube areas kind of go by the wayside, really for a more flexible, nimble meeting space where folks are either benching or sharing spaces and actually working out of their house more and telecommuting. So the workplace in and of itself has been changing, and traditional wisdom would lead you to believe that would actually make for fewer meeting spaces, but the trend's actually going the opposite direction. So we're actually seeing more meeting spaces created within these offices, but the meeting spaces are very different than what they were years ago. There's still boardroom, conference room, training rooms, and whatnot, but the smaller meeting rooms, which were traditionally not outfit with any type of technology, are being set up as really virtual meeting spaces. So you can meet both physically in the environment, but since your team is scattered either at home or they're remote, you can actually bring them into these small meeting rooms and have impromptu meetings. So there's much more collaboration today remotely than there ever was before. And a typical meeting is not a point-to-point meeting, but rather it includes many attendees from many geographical regions and many different locations. And since we're putting this technology in these rooms, whether it's USB devices or displays, the interface has to be easy and the equipment needs to be easy to use. One theme you'll see throughout the next 45 minutes or so is the best interface is no interface. And if we work with things we already understand, it's going to make for a more successful meeting in the long run. And lastly, since there are more meeting spaces being created in the enterprise, data is really important with these rooms as well, to understand how they're being used, what they're doing in these rooms, who's using the spaces, and most importantly, are the meetings that they're having in these spaces appropriate and are they successful? So the data about these meetings is really critical moving forward. So by our estimate, we feel that there's probably about 50 million meeting rooms worldwide, but the rooms are very different today than they were years ago. It's, as I mentioned, it's no longer a traditional boardroom or 6-8 person conference room. A meeting room could be you sitting in your kitchen and having a meeting with someone within your corporate office. It could be a flexible huddle room within a space. Could be a collaborative work environment, whatnot. So the meeting spaces have changed dramatically, and the way we have meetings are changing dramatically. thus there are much more meeting spaces that we all have access to, and things we're turning into traditional meeting spaces as well. So I'll turn this over to you for a second, Paul.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. So exactly what Rob said, the way people are meeting is changing, more flexible, more open spaces. If it's more huddle room spaces we see when we think about what those 50 million meeting spaces consist of. So when we think about solutions that meet those personas and the type of technology in each one of those rooms, Polycom has a solution for each of them delivered by Scenario, right? So if it's in the mobile workplace, if it's using the Skype for Business client or the ERP mobile client, in open spaces when we think about new products that we announced in October like the Centro, and acoustic innovations like noise block and acoustic fence, the ability to drown out and cancel out extraneous noises so far side gets a better experience, and all the way up to the auditorium when we think about really large type of more consumption type of models where in teaching and university type of environments where I have the sound structure that can provide more mic pickups and better acoustics in those situations. So the key is, depending on what kind of space you're working with. If it's at your home office, maybe it's just a phone. If it's a huddle space, maybe it's the Trio, and that Trio is that triangular looking phone. We have a picture of that coming up as well. Or if you're more of a standards-based experience, certainly our group series line products are by far none from an acoustic quality and visual acuity perspective. They're fantastic.
Yeah, and throughout, we're going to throw a couple polling questions up throughout the webinar as well. So our first one's going to come up on your screen. So understand, how many of you utilize Skype for your primary unified communications platform? Sorry, Paul. There you go.
All right. Well, with that first question of polling done, I wanted to touch upon the Polycom Real Presence Centro. This device is really interesting, really excited about introducing this in 2015 in October. And the idea behind the Centro is getting back to basics, allowing people to communicate like they used to communicate, sitting around at the table, sitting around on couches, eye level, and making everyone an equal participant in the experience. The Centro is a device that has 27-inch monitors, 4 of them around, you can see sort of around the apparatus there, and it has a camera that goes up and goes down as the meeting starts and completes. So the idea is that all participants are at eye level, at eye contact, and everyone's equal, right? Before, the challenges are in the sort of in the boardroom, I turn my head and the people in the room only see the side of my face. Then I turn my head to talk to folks, locally, and then far side participants see the side of my face. And typically in boardroom environments, it's usually the spotlight is on the presenter, on the speaker, and we're consuming either content or being a participant watching opinion while somebody present or talk. More relaxes when we think about presentation. They're all touch screens. You can add additional screens for content if you wanted extended content outside of the content that would show up on the screens themselves. It is based on the Group Series codec. It is compatible with Skype for Business when we think about interoperability with Real Connect, and which Rob mentioned earlier, with the ability to schedule from Microsoft Outlook to send that invite, that Skype for Business invite out, and everyone just clicks to join or one touch to join to get into that meeting. So like I said, again, it's hard to articulate the use case and value without actually seeing it, because it really makes a lot of sense when you sit down, you're seeing eye contact with the people in the room, and you're in eye contact with the people on the far side. And because it's based on the group series, We do some really interesting things with production rules. So if you stand up or you sit down, there's a panoramic view of far side participants. Either it goes to the top of the screen or to the bottom of the screen, depending on where you are positionally within the environment and around the central. So pretty neat product. And if you're looking for more information about this, or if you want a demonstration, certainly we can work with Scenario to bring one of these to your premises, or to invite you to one of our experience centers as well. So
I've got a second polling question to throw up as well. So what video conferencing platform is utilized by your various organizations as well?
great. Well, thanks, Rob, for that second poll question. So moving on to sort of endpoints, right? When we think about also endpoints, make experiences, that's the old moniker that a lot of folks talk about. It's the endpoint that provides the tactile feedback. Here's a great huddle space experience when we think about what we're doing in the 3 to 4 person space, as well as just a new conferencing phone. So the Real Presence Trio also introduced in last October, and when we think about the first smart hub for group collaboration, the reason I called it a smart hub is because not only is it, and not that I'm impartial working for Polycom, the best quality speakerphone out there on the market, we can up the game in that huddle room and add both video and content as well, right? So it comes with, of course, as a bundle, a USB camera from Logitech and a Visual Plus pod that provides the HDMI to a monitor as well as connections for the USB to that USB camera. And these pair together. The Trio, the speakerphone pairs with this Visual Plus little squared box. And I have extension mics as well if I want to extend the range of the capabilities of this device. It's interesting, it's built on the Android operating system. It supports full scheduling. It's fully compliant and compatible and qualified with Skype for Business, both in Office 365 and on-prem. One of the neat things about this is if I'm using it as only an audio device to maybe replace some of those CX3000 devices, and I wasn't too concerned with, let's say, the video aspect or the content aspect of it, I can use this as a wireless device. This will register across your network wirelessly. Obviously, you still need power to the device, but if you had a Aruba or a Cisco network, a wireless network that's in place, and you were looking to, kind of go wireless and remove the dependency on cables, you can absolutely use this as a voice-only device wirelessly. Some other neat things about this, it is like a Skype for Business experience. We support RDP receive. You can also use it to hook your laptop via micro USB right into the Trio, and you can share content locally. So for those use cases where, hey, I'm just meeting locally and I don't have a projector, but I have a big screen in the room, I can now go ahead and share my desktop right through the system and have that content project on that video display or monitor.
I got a question actually from one of the audience attendees about the Centro. So regarding the Centro, does the Skype for Business integration require an external PC laptop connected, or is that integrated?
So from a Polycom Real Presence Centro, it can register directly with Skype for Business. I say it's a better experience when it's registered to our Polycom infrastructure, and you can share content directly from that. So what happens is if I had Real Connect implemented, and that means the connectivity between the Skype for Business, AVMCU, and conferencing platform, and the Polycom platform, I can exchange content bidirectionally. That means I can go ahead and plug my laptop into the Centro. It means I can use a wireless device. I can use my my IP plus content for my PC, or I can use my Mac as well, or my iPad to share content wirelessly across the network to the Centro and have that appear on the far side if it's a Skype for Business client, if it's another standards-based endpoint, if it's a Cisco endpoint, if it's a a Mac client, etc.
Okay, great. Our third out of four polling question coming up. Is your organization utilizing Skype for enterprise VoIP? All right.
Okay, guys.
Couple announcements here, right, Paul?
These were the big announcements that were made recently at Enterprise Connect, and they're pretty impactful because it talks to the relationship between Polycom and Microsoft, especially if you have an investment in the Microsoft platform from a licensing perspective, and you're looking to figure out how I can bridge standards-based endpoints from a video perspective, a collaboration perspective, into the Skype for Business world. And so these, as we move on to the next slide, the summary of the announcements, there we go, include three things, three parts to it. First, group series. So our group series will be qualified on-prem with Skype for Business and in Office 365 for Business Online. What does this mean? It means when I go to the Open Interoperability website in Microsoft, Microsoft is qualifying this. So if I have an issue that's related to any troubleshooting between Skype for Business, registration, or issues with the group series, Microsoft is going to support that. Okay, so you can call Microsoft for support in some instances, depending on what the issue is. Also, to be consistent with this announcement, we are providing a new user interface being jointly developed by Microsoft and Polycom for the group series. That's going to look like a Skype for Business or a link room system, as it used to be called, now Skype room system. So the big, sort of those big calendar squares in blue, right? So very similar in feel and UX from across all our devices when we're talking about integration with native integration with Skype for Business. That means we support the ability to see those 5 gallery active speakers that would be displayed from the conference that's being hosted, was we call it the Audio Video MCU on Skype for Business. At first, what's going to happen, the user interface is going to require a real presence touch panel, and then later on in the year we're going to see the same user interface on that touch panel come right to the group series. There's nothing lost. There are no features that are subtracted from that experience. It's just a new UX, a new user interface. Number 2 is the Office 365 Cloud Video Interoperability Service, right, or Project Aqua as we call it. And this will be the first cloud-based interoperability service for Office 365 customers. This is important is because if you have an investment and you're moving 100% to the cloud, to Office 365 for Skype for Business, well, what do I do about video endpoints, the standards-based video endpoints I may have investment in, or I want to provide interoperability for business-to-business partners that might be using H323 devices or SIP standard-based devices to connect into those Microsoft meetings that I schedule. And so this service is going to allow that to happen. So it's basically, if you're familiar with Real Connect, and we'll move through what Real Connect is from a workflow perspective, scheduling out of Outlook, sending the invite out to Link and Skype users, sending that invite out to those resource mailboxes associated with those standards-based video endpoints, and everyone clicks to join. So if I click to join from a Skype client or from Outlook, if I one-touch join from the standards-based endpoint, that's the type of interoperability we're going to provide. And it's going to be a service that's offered right in Office 365 to customers on a per user per month basis. Now, the question you're going to ask me, when is this available? Well, more towards latter of the end of this year. Now, number 3, the last announcements was a new native Skype for Business solutions called Project Rigel. Along with Polycom and Logitech, and are primarily the ones who are creating new and different types of devices for a native Skype for Business room experience. This can be from huddle rooms. This can be in combination with the Surface Hub, and two devices that are part of Project Rigel today that are in Polycom's wheelhouse is the CX5100, that panoramic round table device that takes advantage of that panoramic field within the Skype for Business client. That can pair with a Surface Hub now to provide additional video solutions for the Surface Hub versus the built-in, as well as our Trio. So our Trio can pair directly with the Surface Hub as well, providing just a better audio experience, right? Mics and the audio experience, the deep basses that you'll hear from the Trio. So those are the three announcements that we made at Enterprise Connect, and we'll go through each one briefly. So go to the next slide here. So as I said about Project Rigel, as we call it, here's some pictures of what these sort of new panels are going to look like. They're going to be completely interoperable with the cloud video interoperability, meaning that these are more native endpoints. And with the cloud video interoperability service that I mentioned earlier, Real Connect, we can bridge the standards-based world with the Skype for Business world, keying off that same Skype for Business invite. So no add-ins, no plugins, nothing changes. Native experiences across both types of platforms, but a consistent scheduling experience, a consistent join experience, and with the new UX and the new user interfaces that we're scanning some of our codecs with, the experience is going to be Skype for Business like. And you can see on the right hand side, you can see some pictures of the Trio and the CX5100. Okay. Group series. Here's a picture of group series, and certainly the new interface we're showing. It's kind of small, but it does show sort of the new interface, how it's very Skype-like, and we have different layouts on people and content and picture-in-picture, and or all sorts of things you get with the group series. That's coming right to Skype for Business. Like I said before, we're going to support both online, it's going to be qualified with, and it's going to be qualified first with the Touch UI controller, and then the interface or the UX will come to the group series a little later on in the year. This should be available with full qualification, the new UX, mid-year, late summer time frame. We should see this available for purchase in our SKUs and things like that. And of course, supporting different types of Active Directory authentication mechanisms like ADOL, which would be multi-factor authentication, support QoE and log upload and things like that, especially for troubleshooting and stats. And then finally, so it's not just about if I have an existing VTC investments, because you may want to also sign up for the service even if you don't have a VTC investment, because it allows your business partners to join these types of Skype for Business invites from a standards-based endpoint, right? So what happens is in the standards-based endpoint, we'll join the Polycom infrastructure that's hosted in Azure, right, in this service. And this is all hidden from the users. They don't really know any difference where they're joining from, but it provides the ability to join from a Cisco AH323 device or a SIP endpoint device that might be even registered to different infrastructure in a different business altogether by dialing a string that we provide instructions in a Skype for Business invite, right? Because there's a field in there where you can add instructional text on how to join meetings if you're not registered necessarily to, let's say, scenario number 1. But 2 different scenarios, 2 different use cases, leveraging existing VTC investments for Skype for Business. So by marrying the 2 MCUs together and providing the same workflow structure that we'll see in the next section, we can provide a consistent experience for both platforms, a native experience for both platforms, but a consistent experience in the join, the sharing of content bidirectionally within that particular session. And number 2, of course, once again, touching upon not every customer that's invited to a Skype meeting may have Skype for Business, and being able to provide a mechanism for those users who might be on standards-based endpoints, or let's say a Real Presence desktop, or whatever standards-based software client or physical codec to join that Skype for Business invite, scheduled invite as well. And those are our 3 announcements that pretty exciting. It does open up the doors for a lot of interoperability and integration.
It's good stuff.
Yeah.
So a couple things I want to point out. So there are traditional meeting challenges that we all run across day to day. Really, if you're attending from a conference room or attending remotely as well, and attending from a variety of platforms. So the first is historically the industry has been really focused on the in-room meeting experience. Peripheral devices, whether they're screens and microphones, speakers, as is everyone's in a room and you meet there, or it's a virtual meeting using a codec or whatnot. But we're really trying to get people to think outside of that in-room meeting experience, to consider that the meeting really starts when you're actually scheduling the meeting. And a lot of the themes you're going to see throughout this this webinar is really about controlling and setting up the meeting from the time that it's scheduled. So we really look at this as an entire experience, which includes setting up the meeting, having the meeting, and seeing how how everything works in that meeting, and the things that you're going to do after that meeting. So it's a meeting experience. It's not just actually walking in a room and having a meeting. Typically, there's no resource scheduling around. So someone will schedule a meeting in Outlook. They might schedule resource, but you walk in and there's no directory integration. People still carry IP addresses and call numbers around with them, and text all around to different attendees where to call into. With this leads to a ton of scheduling and call launching issues. Again, the interfaces are confusing, which is one of the things that it's nice about the announcement just came out, is building common, easy-to-use interfaces which are consistent with the tools we already use every day. Obviously, there are technology issues, and the idea here is to try to integrate disparate unified conferencing and collaboration platforms, which leads us really into Real Connect, which Paul will touch on here.
Yeah, so going off what Rob said, Polycom Real Connect, right? Just a unique way of solving problems. We listen to our customers about the challenges of how do I schedule the meeting, dealing with disparate platforms, how do I join the meeting, what's my PIN number, what's that conference code, what happens if I'm remote, how do I get in, what are the instructions, and so the idea, listening to our customers, as we came up with this concept of Real Connect, and we leverage Microsoft Outlook for scheduling. We provide a one-touch join experience just like you get from the Skype for Business and the Outlook invite that you send out. Skype users are going to click to join. They're going to join. What are they going to join? They're going to join the Skype for Business AVMCU. There's nothing changing in that workflow, right? And then, of course, being able to choose really any device. That, from a Real Connect perspective, we don't care the device you're joining from. We're going to bridge the standards-based world together with the Skype for Business world. And operational benefits are pretty intuitive, right, and obvious. We're going to increase user adoption because you're going to reduce frustration associated with the scheduling and join experience and the in-room meeting experience. We're going to provide you a mechanism to share content bidirectionally. So, and it doesn't matter if the standards-based endpoint shares content. It doesn't matter if the Skype for Business client shares content. It's going to show up where it's supposed to show up as well. And so when we think about operational benefits and giving you investment protection in the licensing and the platform that you might be using, Microsoft Skype for Business. And because the Skype for Business clients will meet on the Skype for Business side, you can reduce the requirements of everyone in a traditional VMR approach or a virtual meeting room approach where everybody has to meet on the bridge, which means I need a much larger bridge, and I'm not taking advantage of the AVMCU capabilities that I have my investment with. So we're providing a bridge where standards-based endpoints meet on the Polycom side of the bridge. Microsoft endpoints, Skype for Business endpoints, mobile clients that might be running the mobile Skype for Business client will always meet on the Skype for Business AVMCU, and we're going to bridge those two MCUs together in something we call an intelligent cascade. And we're going to see a simplified workflow in the next slide of how that looks. And so we'll just build it out. We can build out the slide. So on the left-hand side, invite via Outlook. So to visually display that, we open up Microsoft Outlook. We Skype enable that meeting. We send it to our participants, both Skype users as well as standards-based endpoints. And those standards-based endpoints, we ask, well, how do they get the calendar? How do they get that one-touch, join capability? Well, there's a resource room mailbox associated with that endpoint, right? And we can invite that. We can click, actually, there's a field where it says rooms, and you can search out the rooms, and you have an auto accept policy. And because of that, calendar information gets populated, our codecs talk either directly with Exchange or through a calendar proxy that we have an application that pushes that join button to other endpoints outside of Polycom like Cisco endpoints, so they can have the same experience with one-touch join. And then how do I join? Well, simple. If it's a Skype for Business meeting from Outlook, I click on the meeting. I'm joining the AVMCU side of it, the Microsoft Skype for Business side of it. If I am a Polycom endpoint, and let's say down at the bottom a group series or an HDX, I can click to look at the calendar and click join. If it's a link room system, that's part of the same experience from a link perspective. I click the panel and I join the meeting that way, or even a Cisco endpoint. I use the remote control, I go to calendar, it says the meeting, shows me the meeting time, I click the button and it automatically joins. I don't have to dial into an IVR, I don't have to enter conference IDs, so the workflow is much more seamless than some of our competitors who kind of copied us in some of the workflow.
Got another last polling question here.
Yep.
So, in what time frame are you looking to deploy video and/or video interoperability solution?
And to reiterate, we can build out the slide too, a consistent room experience. So when we think about Real Connect, what are we doing? So we're taking the standards-based video endpoints, we're taking Skype for Business, and we're exchanging modalities between the two, audio, video, and content. And the neat thing about Real Connect is when I share content out of the standards-based video, it can be Cisco, it can be Polycom, it can be a life size, whatever it is, and you share content, it's going to show right up on the link or Skype for Business stage. It's not going to show up in a video window, it's not going to look hokey, it's going to look exactly the same as if another Skype for Business client was sharing content, the desktop or an application, with another Skype for Business client. We also receive the 5 video streams, right? The gallery, active speakers from the gallery view to the standards-based endpoint, to the video display, our monitor. But on top of that, with our infrastructure, you will also have the capabilities of seeing 11 additional standards-based endpoints in a continuous presence layout. Microsoft calls it gallery view because you can see 5 active speakers in gallery view. We receive all 5 active speakers in that gallery view as they switch and change, but we also can see 11 additional standards-based endpoints in a Hollywood Squares layout, or we call it continuous presence. So we'll talk a little bit about our Real Connect architecture. So our Real Connect architecture, very similar to the Skype for Business architecture, is that there's a, if we want standards-based endpoints internally that are registered to our core, and you have Skype for Business clients at the bottom, you can see where it's at Polycom Core and Skype for Business front-end servers. That's where the cascade occurs. The cascade is occurring between the Polycom Core and the Skype for Business front-end server, so the AVMCU. And what happens if I have remote participants from the standards-based side and remote participants from the Skype for Business side that want to join? Well, remote participants from Skype for Business can join right through federation, or if they're a remote user that's registered to your your particular Skype for Business front-end poll, well, they'll join through the Edge server, the Microsoft Edge server. Same on the Polycom side. We have this concept of we call a Real Presence Access Director, and it's an Edge server that's analogous with the Skype for Business Edge. And remote endpoints would register remotely across the internet, and they can register and gain access to those meetings. So when you think about Firewall Traversal, ICE, we support ICE, Turn, and Stun, just like Skype for Business does. Standards-based endpoints, both H323 and SIP, will come through the Polycom Edge, and the cascade can occur when we think about how Real Connect works. And like I said, we're bringing the same workflow to Office 365 in the cloud, fully in the cloud, without having a dependency on any on-premises equipment. But that's, like I said, later in the year. If that's something that you're interested in, certainly we're here to answer questions and work with Scenario and you guys to, come up with a solution around that and what that would look like.
Great.
And sort of in summary, how do we deliver all of this, right? We spoke a little bit about hardware, mixture, virtualization, 100% in the cloud, a mixed approach, hybrid, hosted. It can be, hosted in a service provider model. We can even support Real Connect when I mean in a service provider model. We can support multiple Active Directory forks, multiple SIP domains with the service provider model as well. But typically, what do we see in the industry? If it's let's say I have an on-prem or mixed environment, we typically see the bridge as a hardware unit, right? A chassis. So we went to a RMX modular 1800, 1801 chassis that can be stacked. So we kind of got away from the really heavy and big hardware components. We went to much more of a modular approach now with that. And we see the other components virtualized in the intelligent call router, right? The content transcoding services. We see those types of components virtualized. But like I said, we can work with you and Scenario to identify what your specific requirement is, and we're very flexible in that sense.
Great. I'm going to go to a question real quickly. So does Project Aqua / Real Connect provide telephone participants with the ability to Skype for business meetings?
Yeah, so from a PSTN perspective, depending on how you join, if you're joining from, let's say, a VVX, because our VVX phones, as you know, are natively registered with Office 365 today. You can join via just like you would with a Skype client, click to phone. If I was a PSTN caller and I had dial-in PSTN capabilities enabled on that AVMCU through Microsoft, you're going to be able to certainly dial in from a phone if that's your preferred method. So that answered the question. Great. And it would absolutely work with Real Connect.
Okay, great. Okay, so we're going to sum things up here, and we got a couple more questions. So just a couple things to note. So I think it's pretty clear that, and I can say personally for someone who's been in this industry for about 20 years, this is probably one of the most exciting times in conferencing and collaboration. But at the same time, it's really tough to get your arms around appropriate solutions because there are so many different options out there, and there are a lot of options that actually that don't really integrate with other things. I think is the best way to state it. But our entire conferencing environment is changing dramatically, and you really need to consider and do research as to what really makes sense for your organization. You got to really spend time considering the entire experience, not just what's in the room. It's not about a codec or a display or the things in the room. It's all about the overall experience. You got to think about setting up the meeting, having the meeting, and then things on the back end as well, whether it's recording, archiving, things of that sort, gathering data about the meeting. You need to consider these interoperability options, which is really the theme of what we're talking about today. Different platforms and how they operate with each other and how to make that seamless. And because the user experience will differ dramatically depending on how you set up your infrastructure. And I think the real takeaway is that seamless collaboration isn't a pipe dream. And anyone who's been trying to put different solutions together, especially over the past couple of years, it can be frustrating. But it really has gotten a point where these things are seamlessly integrating with each other, and it's a process that we all work with every day. Should make it much easier. So you want to add something on that, Paul?
Really think about also the workforce and how it's changing with millennials coming into the workforce. So an interesting stat is 22%, millennials are 22% more likely to make decisions in social collaborative environments, and that includes video. And we think about things like Centro and Trio, and how do I bridge those experiences and when we think about retention, providing those native tools and collaboration tools that may include video, that may include different experiences, it's pretty important, especially with the new generation of workers that are coming into the workplace.
It's a great point. So a couple questions. Will Real Connect be additional monthly or annual fees?
So in regards to so in regards to an on-prem deployment, we have a Clarity model that can be both. So there can be it can be a capital purchase or it can be a subscription purchase. Now in regards to the service in Office 365, that's going to be a 100% subscription-based per month type of service, very similar to how Microsoft runs their E1, E3, E5 licensing. It's going to be a checkbox, and it's going to be, and actually Microsoft will own that billing.
Great. And I've got one more question. So what do you think the meeting experience will look like in the next 3 to 5 years? So so we could both take a stab at this. So it's 5 years out. It's tough to say, but the one trend that you can count on is that interfaces will continue to evolve. I think from things that we haven't talked about as well, which we all see, as bandwidth becomes more readily available, it's going to make for a more improved meeting as well. So we're more and more reliant on mobile and cellular platforms, and it's gotten much better, especially with the scalable video coding platforms that have been released, as well as some enhancements within the browser platforms as well, encoding and decoding within browsers. But as the browsers evolve and as bandwidth becomes more available, it'll make for a better end user environment. And that will help the overall meeting experience. And from an interface perspective, they're just going to continue to get more integrated. Paul, do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with all of that. So I put my technology hat on and what I see what's going on in the industry and what our partners are working on. Virtual reality, augmented reality, depending, today it's coming to the video game platform, but later maybe it comes to the conference room. When we see bandwidth become more commoditized and not as expensive, we're going to see new ways of collaboration. I think H.265, right? When we think about what are the next, encoding standards, H.265, VB9, when we can push, 4K and 8K content across a 1 meg pipe. I think those are some of the technologies we're going to see in the next, 3 to 5 year time frame, really upping that experience and new and different ways of interacting, and a lot of wearable tech and whatever that looks like. So